With the exception of Peyton Watson and Zeke Nnaji, I have little to no knowledge of like all these guys that are coming in. So I'm wondering if you could just take me through everyone and talk a little about expectations for them, what you like, what you're concerned about. So we'll start with Peyton Watson, who, as an aside, I don't know if I'm just sipping whatever Calvin Booth is sipping, but watching him, I went back and watched some of his summer league stuff before we recorded this. I am smitten with Peyton Watson. So what do you expect to see from his role this year? What will you be watching most closely?
Well, Peyton Watson's interesting to me, and I'm actually not quite as sold on him as, well, I'm certainly not as sold on him as Calvin Booth, who's very, very high on Peyton Watson. I mean, first of all, 6'8", 6'9", rangy defender, really, really long wingspan. He's one of those guys who's, tall and skinny, but his wingspan is even longer than you would expect for a tall, skinny guy. He's got that great range. I think he's of the mold of a Jaden McDaniels or a Herb Jones. A guy whose defensive physical tools and his defensive instincts and the way he just makes plays out of nothing. He's a big guy, a big defensive playmaker. That's the mold. And I think that's what Denver wants of him. There's a quote from Nikola Jokic yesterday in camp when somebody asked, hey, what is Peyton Watson on this team? And he said, hey, he needs to be the guy that does everything nobody else wants to do. And I think that is his skill set, to be that type of player, especially early on. I know Calvin views him as a guy that has an offensive upside that is a lot higher than that, maybe even, on that star trajectory, a guy that can put the ball on the court and make. He's a good passer. He has pretty decent vision, good passer, very good in transition. I'm a little more skeptical of that. I think that he's probably more of a raw offensive talent, more in line with a Jaden McDaniels, who again is no slouch, but he's not a guy that you're saying, okay, that's an all-star offensive talent in the making. Same with Herb Jones, a guy who's at times capable shooter, at times capable slasher or finisher or whatever, but not a guy that you look at and say he's a year or two away from being a star offensive player. To me, that's what I think of him. But he is a really good cutter. And when you talk about being in Denver, especially long-term, an instinctual cutter who finishes well at the rim has a role next to Jokic if he can defend. So to me, that's more of what I think he projects to be in the short and the distant future, is a great defensive player who can slash and do some things on offense where he's not a total don't guard that guy.
I'm very interested to see just how over the years the speed and the tightness or fluidity of his handle comes along, because that feels like it'd be the swing skill of, does this guy become something more than a complementary piece on offense? I know Calvin Booth is in love with him. Some of the comments just absolutely spicy. What are your general impressions so far of Jalen Pickett, and how much of an opportunity do you think he gets in year one? And he's someone I did go look more at after I listened to you on the Dunked On pod, because you left me, I guess what I'm Calvin Booth influenced me on Peyton Watson. Maybe you influenced me a lot on Jalen Pickett.
Well, I even did a video breakdown on Jalen Pickett because I have a type, and we all have a type, Dan. I have a type. It's guys that see the court really well and pass the ball really well. Great passers to me. You're going to be easy to win me over if you're a great passer. Boris Diaw, one of my favorite players of all time. Everyone who gives you an insight into the things I value. Well, Jalen Pickett is a phenomenal floor general, for a throwback to a bygone era where your point guard was a guy that just knew how to generate looks. The ball's in his hands a lot. He does dribble a lot, uses his size. Even though he's only 6'2" or so, he's really strong. Teammates, even his Nuggets teammates, refer to him as a bully because he just uses his strength so well. And he passes incredibly well. In media day, Calvin Booth said, we brought in two shooters in Hunter Tyson and Julian Strawther, and we brought in a point guard who generates 3-point shots in Jalen Pickett. And when you watch him play at Penn State and you watch him play for the Nuggets at Summer League, the guy just has a knack for collapsing the defense, staying in control, and finding open 3-point shooters. I love his game. The question's going to be, he's 6'2". If you're 6 foot, and he's a good shooter, he actually shot 40% from three last year. He shot 40% from three in Summer League. His shot looks good, but I think there's skepticism of whether or not he's a true 3-point shooter, or if it's just like something he's trying to add and be passable at. But if you're 6'2" and not a knockdown, Steph Curry-esque 3-point shooter, it's really hard for your skill set to shine, even if you're good at those other things like passing and being a floor general. So that's my real question with him is, I love his game and I think he's a great player, but does he have the size to do it? And then when you ask about opportunity, I think it's going to be really hard for Michael Malone to trust an undersized point guard who wants the ball and needs the ball in his hands a lot. I think it's going to be hard for Michael Malone to trust that guy enough to let him work out and to earn a spot. So I'm rooting for him because he's one of my favorite players, and I just think that long-term it would be great for Denver to find a player like that. but I think that it's going to be really hard for him this year to earn a lot of minutes.
Can you give me the lowdown on Hunter Tyson?
Well, he's unbelievable at Summer League. I mean, surprised all of us. Shot, I think, 60-something% from three over the course of 5 games out there at Summer League. Really high IQ player. If I'm trying to sell it, so he's 6'8", 6'9", slasher, really good 3-point shooter, high basketball IQ, great feel for the game, and has a toughness that might surprise you. He's a country boy, and he plays kind of like a country boy, just like kind of a, loves the physicality, plays hard, dives on the floor, screams and growls and drools when he makes a big play. But he's a high IQ player, and I think if we'll find out just how good he is at this level. But sometimes there are role player guys, like 4th or 5th option guys, who at the college level, if you're a really good 4th or 5th option, well, you might not be on a team good enough to find shots for you. And you might get elevated to a 1st option when that's not your game. And you're a 4th option, you did everything right, but the guys who are option 1 and 2 didn't read the court well. And so you never saw that. At Summer League, he was a guy that really stood out, I thought, at an elevated level of play. The game came to him very naturally. The ball found him, and it found him in large parts because he was in the right places and read the right thing. So I'm high on him. I actually feel like Hunter Tyson, part of this is just the Nuggets and what they need, where they're short. They're short at the forward spot. I think he might have the best chance of playing this year of all the 3 rookies.
Oh, wow. That was going to be a question as I led into. So what are your general impressions of Julian Strawther so far? And I thought he was going to be the one that was most likely to play. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's funny because he has the one skill that is the most ready-made, and that's 3-point shooting, which is one of the most important skills in the NBA. He's an incredibly good shooter. He's one of those guys that's been shooting the deep 3, all this time. So he's not a guy that's afraid to take the deep 3. But the thing about his game is I do feel like there's just too many holes in his game. He's not a great defender. He's got great size, but still, even with his size, quick guards or really even like average speed guards, that's a real challenge for him. And then offensively, he's a great shooter, but I do worry he's a guy that you just run off the line because his game attacking closeout is really weak. He's horrible at getting to the rim. He's horrible at finishing at the rim. And at the NBA level, those things are going to become more and more of a challenge. So he has that one skill, the shooting, but I am curious if how much he can impact an NBA team until he kind of shores up some of his weaknesses.
Is there like something it does seem like he'll work really hard to get threes away from the ball, that earns him credence? Or is it because he becomes this one level off ball threat that's really going to hold him back right away? And you even see the potential because he is 6'7" to where maybe he can, get moving it at different levels of the court.
I think he's a guy that, he's going to play for the Nuggets at some point in the regular season this year, the injuries or whatever's happening. And I wouldn't be surprised if he goes 3 for 3, from behind the 3-point line. But I think he's a guy that the more you play, more teams are going to say, okay, let's see what happens when we force him to put the ball on the floor, and let's see if he can make plays and this type of thing. So there's no question his 3-point shot has value. When you're building, especially when you're asking me, the Nuggets now are a team that the regular season, whatever, they're looking at the playoffs. He's a guy that I would just be so surprised if he worked his way up to being a rotation playoff player because of the holes in his game. At some point, a team is going to say, okay, when he's on the court, sell out to run him off the line, and then he's got nothing for you. They're going to have to reset the offense.